The rain in Oak Creek, Illinois doesn't just fall, it colonizes. It's a heavy rhythmic drumming on the roof of a car that makes you feel like you're trapped in a diving bell, miles underwater. That Tuesday in late October, I sat in my Ford, the headlights cutting weak yellow tunnels through the downpour. I stayed there long after the engine had clicked into silence, watching the glow of my own kitchen window. Inside, Sarah was moving with a lightness I hadn't seen in months. She was humming. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the vibration in her shoulders. Then she picked up her phone. Her entire posture changed. She leaned against the kitchen island, her silhouette arching with a kind of soft, intimate grace. And then she laughed. It wasn't the polite wife laugh she used for my firm's holiday parties. It was a breathless, not a private sound that punctured the quiet of the driveway and left me cold. When I finally opened the front door, the house smelled of garlic and lemon, her signature pasta. But the warmth of the room felt like a lie. As the floorboards creaked under my boots, Sarah jumped. Her hand moved with a jagged, panicked speed, sliding the phone into the deep pocket of her cardigan. "Mark, you're home early," she said, her voice hitting a pitch that didn't belong in our kitchen. "The site visit in Aurora wrapped up fast," I said, watching her eyes. They were darting, searching my face for how much I had seen. "Who was that on the phone? You sounded like you were having a great time." She turned back to the stove, stirring the pasta with unnecessary force. "Just a coworker, Mark. God, Caleb is such a clown. He was telling me about the disaster at the morning briefing. Just work drama, you know how it is." Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Here at Family Secrets and Revenge, we know that the most beautiful homes often hide the ugliest secrets, and today's story is a blueprint for betrayal. I am a structural engineer. My entire professional existence is dedicated to the study of foundations and load-bearing walls. I know exactly how much pressure a steel beam can take before the molecular structure begins to fail. I know that a building doesn't collapse all at once. It happens in the dark, in the joints, mine where the moisture seeps into the concrete and slowly eats the rebar from the inside out. For 8 years, I thought our marriage was a fortress. We had bought this colonial fixer-upper in the suburbs of Chicago when we were 26, spending our weekends with sandpaper in our hair and sawdust in our lungs. We had built this life. But as I sat at the dinner table that night, watching Sarah push a piece of linguine around her plate, I realized I was looking at a structure that had already been condemned. "Caleb seems to be calling a lot lately," I said, trying to sound casual. "Is he the new guy you mentioned? The one from the Naperville office?" Sarah didn't look up. "He's a junior coordinator, Mark. He's young, he's hungry, and frankly, he's a bit of a mess. I'm basically his mentor. And my boss put him on my desk because nobody else has the patience to deal with his energy." She finally looked at me, her expression shifting into that practiced, patient wife mask. "Don't be that guy, Mark. Don't be the jealous husband who interrogates his wife because she's doing her job. I'm tired, okay? I've been carrying that office for 3 months." I wanted to believe her. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away to reach for the wine bottle. The rejection was subtle, but in the world of engineering, even a millimeter of shift can indicate a total structural failure. The following Friday, we had planned to go to Miller's Steakhouse. It was our reset night, a tradition we started years ago to keep the stress of our careers from bleeding into our home life. But the air in the car was thick. Sarah was dressed in a black silk blouse I'd never seen before, her hair done in a way that felt too deliberate for a casual Friday steak dinner. Her phone sat on the white tablecloth between us like a live grenade. Every time the screen lit up with a notification, I felt a physical pang in my chest. "You can check it if it's important," I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "It's not," she snapped, though her eyes lingered on the device. "It's just work. I told you, Caleb is high-strung. He thinks every minor tweak to a marketing deck is a national emergency." 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. This time, a preview of the message appeared. "Can't stop thinking about what you said this morning." The words burned into my retinas. Sarah snatched the phone away, her face flushing a deep, guilty red. "Keita, he's so dramatic," she laughed, but the sound was brittle. "I told him his ideas were revolutionary just to get him to shut up, and now he won't stop thanking me. Honestly, it's exhausting being the only adult in that department. She looked me dead in the eye, and for a second I saw it. The vacuum. The complete absence of the woman I had married. She was looking at me not as a partner, but as an obstacle to be managed, a project to be handled. I realized then that just a coworker was the phrase she used to bury the truth while I stood right over the grave. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Have you ever felt that gut instinct that something was wrong, even when everyone told you that you were being paranoid? And tell me in the comments if you've ever seen just a coworker turn into something more. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the rhythmic sound of Sarah's breathing, wondering how a person could sleep so soundly while their life was built on a lie. By Monday morning, the Mark the husband persona was gone. Mark the engineer had taken over. I needed data. I needed a clear view of the stresses on the structure. I told my firm I was heading to a site inspection in Aurora, but instead I drove my Ford to Naperville. I parked in a satellite lot 3 blocks away from Sarah's marketing firm. I waited. For 4 hours, I watched the glass doors of the corporate plaza. At 6:15 p.m., Sarah emerged. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was Caleb, sharp, tailored, and younger. He put his hand on the small of her back. It wasn't professional. They reached his car, a silver Audi. Before she climbed in, he pulled her into a kiss. It wasn't a co-worker kiss. It was deep and hungry. I sat in my Ford, the binoculars heavy in my hands, feeling the last 8 years of my life dissolve into the gray Illinois twilight. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was building a new life on the ruins of the one we had made together. If you were in my shoes, sitting in that car and watching the person you love kiss a stranger in a parking lot, what would you do? Would you confront them then and there? Or would you wait? Share your thoughts in the comments. I followed the silver Audi to the Gilded Oak, a dim, brick-walled bistro tucked away in a district where nobody from our social circle would ever venture. It was the kind of place designed for secrets. Through the bistro's floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched them. They weren't just eating, they were performing a ritual. Caleb leaned across the table, his thumb tracing the rim of his crystal glass, while he looked at my wife with a predatory hunger. Sarah was glowing. The woman who usually complained about work fatigue was suddenly vibrant. At one point, Caleb reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Sarah closed her eyes and leaned into the touch. I felt the steak I'd eaten for lunch turn to lead in my stomach. 8 years of shared life were being erased by a coworker in a charcoal suit. I beat her home by 20 minutes. I sat in our velvet armchair, the one we'd picked out together in Galena, and waited in the absolute dark. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway sounded like a hammer hitting a nail. When the front door finally clicked open at 10:45 p.m., the smell of expensive Cabernet and a woodsy masculine cologne drifted in before she did. She flipped the light switch, and when she saw me sitting there, she let out a strangled shriek. "Mark, why are you sitting here in the dark like a phantom?" "How was the strategy session?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. "Exhausting," she sighed. "Caleb and I finally finished the pitch. I'm dead." "Funny," I said, standing up slowly, "because I didn't see any Thai food at the Gilded Oak tonight, but I did see the Cabernet, and I saw the way he touched you." The air in the room shifted instantly. Sarah's face hardened into a mask of cold, righteous indignation. "You followed me." Her voice dropped to a hiss. "Mark, do you have any idea how unstable that makes you look? How absolutely toxic that is?" "Sarah, I saw you kiss him. I saw you holding his hand in the park." "You saw what you wanted to see," she shouted. "Caleb was having a mental breakdown, Mark. His fiancée just walked out on him, and I was being a mentor. You're twisting a moment of human compassion into some sordid fantasy because you're insecure." "I'm sleeping in the guest room. I can't even look at you right now." At 3 a.m., I crept into the guest room. Sarah was fast asleep. I picked up her phone and used her thumb to unlock it. I went straight to the messaging app and found a contact saved simply as C. "He suspect anything?" Caleb had texted. "Nothing," Sarah replied. "He's the anchor. Solid, heavy, and completely blind to what's happening above the surface. I'll be at the bistro in 10. But then, I found the message that stopped my heart. The transfer went through, Sarah wrote. That's another 10,000 toward our Seattle fund. Only a few more months and the anchor won't even know we're gone. I felt a cold, crystalline resolve settle over me. Sarah thought I was an anchor, something heavy that just sits at the bottom of the ocean. She forgot that an anchor is also the only thing that can keep a ship from reaching its destination. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on the story below. I read every single one. Have you ever felt that gut instinct that something was wrong, even when everyone told you that you were being paranoid? Tell me in the comments if you've ever seen just a coworker turn into a total nightmare. I knew the digital evidence wasn't enough to break her spirit. I needed to see the mask slip in person. On a Wednesday, 2 weeks before the gala, I drove to her office in Naperville. I didn't call. I didn't text. I walked into the lobby of her marketing firm carrying a bouquet of lilies, her favorite, and a bag of takeout from the bistro we used to love. When I reached her floor, the receptionist tried to stop me. She's in a closed meeting with Caleb Miller, Mark. I really shouldn't let you in. It's our anniversary of the day we bought our house. I lied with a smile that felt like it was made of glass. I walked past her and toward the glass-walled conference room at the end of the hall. Through the glass, I saw them. They weren't looking at spreadsheets. They were standing by the window. Caleb had his arms wrapped around her waist from behind, his face buried in the crook of her neck. Nice Sarah was laughing, that same breathless, private laugh I'd heard in the driveway. I pushed the door open. The silence that followed was heavy and sharp. Sarah jumped back, her face draining of color until she looked like a ghost. Caleb didn't move as quickly. He just adjusted his tie and smirked, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Mark," Sarah gasped, What are you doing here?" "I wanted to bring you lunch," I said, setting the flowers in the bag on the mahogany table. "I thought you were working hard on the Miller account. I didn't realize the strategy involved being so hands-on." Caleb stepped forward, his voice dripping with condescending professionalism. "Hey, Mark, we were actually just celebrating." Sarah finally cracked the code on the Miller campaign. It's a huge win for the firm. "Well, I guess I just got a little caught up in the excitement. You know how it is in marketing. Lots of high energy." "Is that right, Caleb?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "High energy. Is that what you call it when you touch another man's wife in her office?" Sarah stepped between us, her voice rising in a practiced, defensive pitch. "Mark, stop it. You're embarrassing me. Caleb was just giving me a hug because I'm stressed. You're being paranoid again. Honestly, do you want me to lose my job? Go home. We'll talk about your behavior tonight." I looked at the lilies on the table. They looked like funeral flowers. I turned and walked out without saying another word. Behind me, I heard Caleb whisper, "He's losing it, Sarah. Just keep him on the hook until the gala." That night, while Sarah was working late again, I didn't wait for her. I spent the evening in my basement workshop staring at a monitor. Elias had helped me install 4 microscopic, high-definition cameras in the living room and kitchen, the blind spots where Sarah thought she was safe. At 9:45 p.m., the front door opened. Sarah walked in, followed by Caleb. I watched the screen in silence. They didn't even make it to the kitchen. Right there in the foyer of the house I had spent 8 years of my life building. Caleb pinned her against the wall. "How much longer?" he whispered, his voice loud and clear through the high-gain microphone. 10 days, Sarah breathed, her hands tangled in his hair. "The final transfer clears on the morning of the gala. After the presentation, we head straight to the airport. I've already got the luggage in my trunk." "And the anchor?" Caleb asked, laughing. "He's clueless," she said, pulling him toward the sofa. "He actually brought me flowers today. He's so pathetic, Caleb. He thinks he can save us by being nice. He doesn't realize the foundation is already gone." I sat in the dark, watching the woman I loved describe me as a burden to be discarded. Every word was a hammer blow to my heart, but it also tempered my resolve. I wasn't just an engineer anymore. I was a demolition expert. The night before the gala, I insisted we have dinner at home. I spent 4 hours in the kitchen preparing a 3-course meal. Sarah seemed nervous, her eyes constantly darting to her phone, but she sat down. "This is a lot of effort for a Thursday, Mark," she said, picking up her fork. "I wanted to celebrate," I replied. I poured her a glass of the most expensive wine in our cellar. It's a big night tomorrow. Your career is about to change forever. It really is, she said, her voice softening for a moment. I'm sorry I've been so distracted, Mark. The Miller account, it's been everything. I know it has, I said. I looked at her across the candlelit table. You know, I was reading about structural failure today. Did you know that some buildings look perfectly fine on the outside, even while the rebar is completely rusted away? You wouldn't even know it till the moment the weight becomes too much, and then, boom, total collapse. Sarah paused, her wine glass halfway to her lips. That's a cheerful dinner topic, Mark. Why are you telling me this? Because I realized something, I said, leaning forward. I always thought I was the one holding this house up. But I learned that if the foundation is built on sand, it doesn't matter how strong the beams are. The sand always shifts, and once it shifts, the house is already dead. It's just waiting for the wind to blow. Sarah set her glass down, her face hardening. I don't like the way you're talking tonight. You're being cryptic and weird. I have a huge presentation tomorrow. I need to be focused. Oh, you'll be focused, I whispered. I've made sure of that. I've even prepared a little surprise for the presentation. I think the partners are going to be very innovated by what they see. What surprise, she snapped. Just a little something to show them the real Sarah, I said, smiling. The one they don't see in the brochures. She laughed, a brittle, nervous sound. You're so sweet, Mark. But seriously, don't interfere with my work. I've got this under control. I know you do, I said, standing up to clear the plates. Sleep well, Sarah. Tomorrow's going to be a day the Naperville marketing world never forgets. The morning of the gala arrived with a cold, pale sun. I woke up at 5 a.m. and watched Sarah sleep. She looked peaceful, her face free of the tension that had defined our last year. She was dreaming of Seattle. I stood in the bathroom and watched her get ready. She spent 2 hours on her hair and makeup. She put on the crimson dress, the one she'd bought with the money she'd skimmed from our emergency fund. Can you zip me up? She asked, standing in front of the full-length mirror. I stepped behind her. My hands were cold as they touched the silk of her back. I felt the warmth of her skin that I had once loved, skin that was now a stranger's. As I pulled the zipper up, I looked at our reflection. You look like a completely different person today, Sarah, I said quietly. It's just the dress, Mark, she laughed, checking her earrings. It's a big night. Everything is changing today. I know it is, I said. I kissed her cheek, the last time I would ever touch her. I felt the weight of the flash drive in my pocket, the digital bomb that was timed to go off in exactly 12 hours. Good luck, Sarah. I hope you get exactly what you've worked so hard for. The Drake Hotel in downtown Chicago was a sea of black ties and silk gowns. Sarah was a vision in a deep crimson dress. Caleb was across the ballroom, looking every bit the golden boy. I stood near the bar, sipping a club soda. In the shadows of the mezzanine, I saw Elena. She was dressed in midnight blue. When we locked eyes for a single heartbeat, the charges were set. At 9 p.m., the CEO, Caleb's uncle, took the stage. And now, Arthur boomed, a look at the visionaries who made this year our most profitable yet. The lights dimmed, but instead of the polished marketing reel Sarah had prepared, a different file began to play. The first image was a high-resolution shot of Sarah and Caleb at the motel in Elgin. The room went silent. Then came the audio. Mark is so boring. He's the anchor. He'll never notice the money is gone until we're halfway to Seattle. Then came the spreadsheets. The Delaware LLC. Every cent was tracked, highlighted in a bright, accusatory red. I watched Sarah. The crimson of her dress seemed to bleed into her face as she turned a sickly, translucent white. Caleb tried to move toward the stage. But Elena stepped out from the wings and handed him divorce papers. Arthur Miller, the CEO, didn't wait. Security, please escort Sarah and Caleb from the premises. A full internal audit and criminal referral will follow. The Golden Boy and the Rising Star were let out through the service entrance, past the trash bins, as 300 of their peers watched in horrified silence. I spent that night in a hotel. By Monday, Sarah was staying in a cramped studio. Caleb was gone too. Turns out, when the money was frozen, his love for Sarah disappeared. I kept the house. I kept my retirement. I even kept the golden retriever. A year has passed. I still live in Oak Creek, but I've stripped the house down to the studs and rebuilt it. A bridge that has collapsed can't be crossed again. You just have to build a new one on better ground. And to thank you so much for staying with me through this journey on family secrets and revenge. This story is a stark reminder that the truth is the only foundation that can weather a storm, and that betrayal eventually pays a price that no Seattle fund can cover. If you found Mark's journey as gripping as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. What would you have done if you were Mark? Would you have walked away quietly, or would you have chosen the gala? I'd love to read your overall thoughts based on my story in the comments below. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay honest, and remember, every secret eventually finds the light.